let's recap. I'm back. So let's recap. Abortion is Neo-Chattel slavery because the abortion industry traffics in death for profit. The abortion industry exploits women as breeders, handmaidens. Planned Parenthood, one of the largest abortion providers in the world, has admitted that they target black women, Hispanic women, poor women, and any population viewed to be dysgenic, unfit to procreate. And the abortion industry's intentional targeting of black women reintroduced chattel human trafficking. And by reintroducing chattel human trafficking, it also protects the forms of human trafficking such as prostitution as well, because not only are the bodies of black babies, dead black babies, being profited from, but the bodies of any baby who has been a victim of organizations such as Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers have been, let's see, those babies have been just exploited to the max, okay? Their bodies have been used for profit. They've been sold for profit, okay? And it's a cyclical process of them being sold for profit because plain such abortion providers, such abortion providers make money by performing the abortions, which murders the babies, and then they sell the body parts of the babies, so they make profit from killing the babies and selling the body parts of the babies, and then the private or public entities to whom they sell the babies further profit from their use of those from the use of the bodies of those babies and the body parts thereof. Okay, so this is a profit from death. Abortion creates a market of death, is what it has done, using systemic racism as its weapon of choice. Yet they disguise it as Yet they disguise it and promote it as family planning and women's rights, and that's not what it is. It's a population control agenda. And which means that Roe versus Wade introduced another form of systemic racism. It introduced abortion as another form of systemic racism, of legal systemic racism. And politicians such as Joe Biden and Ralph Northam exploit women's rights and reproductive health care to continue the racist agenda of eugenics, which at one point included forced sterilization, which Margaret Sanger heavily promoted in her speech, My Way to Peace. Yes. And Fannie Lou Hamer, who was a victim of it, though she overcame the circumstances of that, she overcame the circumstances of that abuse and became victorious, a victorious overcomer. And she referenced her forced sterilization and as a Mississippi appendectomy. She referred to it as a Mississippi appendectomy in her sick and tired of being sick and tired speech. Yes. And if you want to learn a little more about it, There I have a reference to an article from NPR called "The Supreme Court Ruling That Led to 70,000 Forced Sterilizations," and an article from the independent.org called "Even as they cancel each other, progressives continue to downplay their movement's racist past." And it discusses Margaret Sanger and Woodrow Wilson, which leads me to the topic of more focus on the topic of allies versus enemies, okay? As we discussed, Margaret Sanger, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, they were not allies, period. They were not allies. They were elitists who were operating deceptively, agents of chaos, using a feminist platform and civil rights platform to advance population control, progressive agendas of elitism. That is what they were doing. And we just have to be careful. They are not allies, just like W.E.B. Du Bois and Eunice Rivers. They were not allies to us. The CEO, Alexis McGill Johnson, she's not allied to us. Anybody who's black in particular that knows the history of Planned Parenthood and how abortion itself has become weaponized against black people for a population control agenda is not our ally, period. They are not our ally telling us, okay, for you as an individual to focus on yourself. You need to focus on yourself so you can live a better life. You can't be bothered with nobody else. You can't have a child in your life. That's foolishness. That's utter foolishness. Utter foolishness. It is utter foolishness, and it is like counterproductive. And then they want to say, okay, it's racist to ban abortions and denying black women. They like that. They exploit black women's reproductive health to promote abortion. And black women, look at Fannie Lou Hamer. She says that they can abortionize themselves because I'm gonna try to save the children. And then you look at Dr. Mildred Jefferson. She was a pro-life advocate and the first black woman to graduate from Harvard Medical School, who was a dedicated, lifelong pro-life advocate. An amazing woman, okay? And so many other black people who were pro-life, okay? Black elitists who believe in assimilationist eugenics. Many of them believe in assimilationist eugenics, who think that the best of the best black people should breed not with just the best of the best black people, not with the best of the best black people, but best of the best of all people, right? They think that the unwashed masses of humanity, and particularly black people, aren't fit to procreate. W.E.B. Du Bois says this. He was a black rights advocate for his own black rights that happened to align with the interests of those who he wouldn't associate with. You see, he didn't consider Marcus Garvey nor Booker T. Washington to even be worthy of having a platform or to even have a say in the direction of that black people should take. And it's because he considered them to be ignorant Negroes. And just because he had been college educated, and he didn't even grow up around black people, really. He grew up in a predominantly white community, and those people put money together for him to even be able to go off to college. rich. He lived in an integrated like community that integrated predominantly white community that accepted him. You know, they accepted him. But once he left, he's up there in Massachusetts, and once he left and went down south and saw where he wasn't being treated as a person of great stature, of like an educated, sophisticated dandy, that he basically um viewed himself as, he wasn't being treated respectably, then he was ready, like many of us are. We see injustice, especially when we are being treated, being discriminated against. He basically fought out, spoke out against it, but he was reckless also. Now, Booker T. Washington was too accommodating, but W.E.B. Du Bois's pride was hurt and didn't even think about, that he was in the South and he needed to study the South and see how to move in the South, right? And he didn't think about the very people. Okay, let me read this quote to you by him from Negroes and Birth Control, which was published in 1939. Let's see where did I put that quote of Du Bois. Did I put it up here? I'm thinking, okay, this has been a long video and I'm not going to, I took a break. I took a few minutes break, so I may have already discussed Du Bois. I might have already discussed him, but I have no problem mentioning Du Bois whatsoever. But yes, he was talking about the unwashed Negro masses. Is what? Oh yeah, I could keep scrolling this way. And yeah, he was talking about the unwashed Negro masses. And that's the thing. The elitism of eugenics knows no race. You see, as targeted to marginalized and disenfranchised person, birth control has its origins in eugenics. Okay. And speaking on that subject, as it pertains to Black people in this country, the eugenics movement highly influenced reproductive health and the birth control movement in the Black community. And you had the so-called talented 10th, the Black leaders, heralding it, leading the charge of promoting birth control in the community, even though for people like Margaret Sanger, who reached out to Black professionals, lawyers and doctors and theologians and pastors, Black clergymen, she reached out to them because she said that they could, and this was in a letter to, I think it's Clarence J. Gamble, if I'm not mistaken, to name C.J. Gamble, reached out to him in a letter where she reached out to him in a letter seeking funding for, if I'm not mistaken, the Negro Project, in which she was highly interested. And became her inspiration for the American Birth Control League and Planned Parenthood. And which she, as a Malthusian eugenicist, advocated birth control. But her motive was for the purpose of population control. But her spiel for it. She sold it, the idea. She sold the idea of it to people as being for wise family planning. If I'm not mistaken, I said that earlier. If I didn't, this is the second time I've recorded. I've started recording this. So it may have been in one of the, in that very first record. So sorry. But just to make sure this is stated, that is what she did. And she enlisted the help of people such as W.B. Du Bois, Mary McLeod Bethune, and Adam Clayton Powell, Martin Luther King, even, to do this. Now, she and as eugenicists, she and Du Bois were of like mind in terms of deciding who was unfit to procreate. I'm not so sure about Adam Clayton Powell and Martin Luther King nor Mary McLeod Bethune. They may not have been told the true motive of the promotion of birth control in the black community from Sanger. They may not have been told that. Anyways, but again, the black elitists have been in a position in society where that is a duplicitous one. It is of a duplicitous nature. They appoint themselves as leaders within the community usually, and try to garner a lot of support from the very people who they seek to exploit to their own advantage, to elevate themselves by exploiting those people and keeping those people at a level of oppression to where they can never to where upward mobility is highly difficult for them, you know, because they don't have the connections outside of the black community that the black elitists have, that the black leaders have formed, So this is why many of the, what's regular black people, ones who ain't connected, they seek to join secret societies and other black elitist organizations so that they can have access to channels that are connected to the main to access to channels and resources that are connected to the mainstream society, and yet there's a lot of compromise that goes along with being connected to those channels, because usually fringe elements are in those channels. They are at the intersect where their interests, they can find a way where their interests would seem to overlap the interests of those of black people, but they really don't. But they use black people to gain more political power, to advance their own causes, and they represent the black people's causes first, and then before you know it, the campaign about black people, the topics that impact the issues that impact black people take a back seat. Addressing the issues that impact black people take a back seat to damn, dim the light too much in my face. Way too much. Okay, I'm gonna leave that alone. Leave well enough alone. Yes. But yes, though, Indeed, but at the intersect, it's like the issues that they claim to have been fighting for that impact Black people, but all of a sudden the focus shift from issues that from the focus shift from addressing the focus shifts from addressing issues that impact Black people to the issue more onto the issues that impact the others of the intersect. You see, hence that here's that flag with a lot of colors that include the color. It's like what is that? So that's the thing about it. And see, Black elitists, if I didn't say it earlier, they ascribe to assimilationist eugenics, which I do. I said that earlier. They ascribe to assimilationist eugenics, and ordinarily they wouldn't even see themselves oh interacting, casually interacting with what they would refer to as Du Bois called it, the ignorant Negro masses, and this is what I'm trying to do, quote him. Yes, I'm quoting Du Bois and his ignorant Negro comment. Let's see, Du Bois. It's so foolish. I just got a pen. And I did see Du Bois. Here we go. Indeed, though. But Du Bois, he was. Let me find this first, because this is bugging me now, because I know for a fact. Let me see something. I was just looking at that earlier. Okay, here it is. It's from his publication, Negroes and Birth Control. He stated. Among the more intelligent class was a postponement of marriage which greatly decreased the number of children. Today, among this class of Negroes, few men marry before 30 and numbers of them after 40. The marriage of women of this class has similarly been postponed. In addition to this, the low incomes which Negroes receive make bachelorhood and spinsterhood widespread, with a naturally resulting lowering, in some cases, of sex standards. On the other hand, the mass of ignorant Negroes still breed carelessly and disastrously, so that the increase among Negroes, even more than whites, is from that part of the population least intelligent and least fit and least able to rear their children properly. That is what he stated. See, and he is also quoted in Dorr and Logan's 2011 Quality, Not Mere Quantity Counts, Black Eugenics, and the NAACP's Baby Contest in Lombardo's 2011 A Century of Eugenics in America. Yeah, okay. Here's what it is. I'm reading my notes. There's an article by Dorr and Logan that was written in 2011 that is in this article is called Quality, Not Mere Quantity Counts, Black Eugenics and the NAACP Baby Contest. And that article is in Lombardo's A Century of Eugenics in America. And Du Bois is quoted as saying, only fit blacks should procreate to eradicate the racist heritage. Oh, the races heritage of moral iniquity. So basically, he was basically in agreement with Thomas Sowell's um, assessment of cracker culture and how what is viewed to be black culture in America is really cracker culture. Is really an offshoot of cracker culture because let's face it, redneck culture, that's how Thomas Sowell refers to it based on his research. Even the way black people in the South speak and what's considered to be ebonics or ghetto grammar, country grammar type stuff. That's from Britain. Because and when you think about it, who were black people around during the transatlantic slave trade and during slavery and after slavery? Black people were around a bunch of white Southerners. So it is not unusual that, you know, the groups would be somewhat similar, just like some of the cultural habits of the slaves rubbed off on white Southerners. So even the cooking style, look at jambalaya, which to me, when I saw jollof rice, I was like, "What jollof?" Because like that just got real. I guess because of the internet, more people find out about it. And I'm going jollof rice, man. That's jambalaya. And so, uh, and like with jambalaya, gumbo, even using the what they call it, trinity with the celery, peppers, and onions and stuff. So, yeah, no, I'm kind of hungry now anyway. Oh, but that is, it's so not surprising. And I'm not gonna lie, when I saw Thomas Sowell talking about that, I was like, because I think I may have noticed that in high school. I'm like, when you look at the folks who call themselves rednecks and like in the media and stuff, then you look at, so-called hood culture, it's almost exactly the same. The behavior is almost exactly the same. It's almost like they really should be brothers in arms rather than more adversarial in the way that they are. Anyway, yes, that is what, that's how the boys felt. That is how he felt. And if you want to know more about assimilationist eugenics, I've written several articles about it, right, that I shared in the article that accompanies this episode. Okay. Hand in glove, black elitism and liberal white supremacy, the progressivist cancer of world society, depopulation, abortion, euthanasia. Satan's agenda includes Hegelian tactics of the elites. Sociogenomics, the next phase of assimilation, is eugenics. Support of the super predator, white supremacists and liberal disguise, and the mainstream media that promotes them. I was referencing Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. And especially they had both, each of them had had those beyond the pale speeches. And I also wrote this. Stacey Abrams is for feticide, infanticide, and eugenics because, yes, black elitists and white liberal supremacists who are basically white supremacists, white elitists that go under the guise of being progressivists, and they really are just elitists that weaponize race against people. They use race to divide, to marginalize people and to dehumanize people and to divide groups. And I wrote, Black agents of white supremacy in the media endorse racist Joe Biden. I wonder why are y'all know Joe Biden's history, don't you? As his record, his segregationist record as a politician. Why are you promoting him? Why did Obama choose him as a running mate? Seriously, it's foolishness. It's like, didn't you know something about him before you picked him? He could have done. He should have just picked Rand Paul for real. And let's see. And again, like I addressed earlier, read that article from the Insider. A new project details newspapers' role in lynchings post 1865. A historian says newspapers were a pillar to uphold a white supremacist political economy. And while you know, wow, such agendas of population control seem to mostly affect Black people. It will impact everybody because it's going to expand Black people, as in, but like in the cases of medical apartheid, Black people are always used to experiment, like the Tuskegee experiment. Black people get used for that. And it's gonna be where the the mainstream community of America, mainstream population, but white America, majority white America, will also be treated in the same way. Now, different strategies may be employed to get them to be accepting of the agendas, but it, population control is trying to reduce the global population. Global population. See? So, all of us are impacted by these elitist agendas, no matter what continent. So, race must be put aside so that we can all recognize those who are truly against us. And I mean, seriously, it was just, look at this. Now, being ally of Du Bois, well, Margaret Sanger and Du Bois, they were allies, okay? And she was highly interested in the fecundity of Black people, the Black reproductive health, Black birth rates, Black sexuality, it seems. So her life's mission was to prevent those whom she viewed as dysgenic from having any significant influence on society and the progressive development of humanity. Okay. And people like Du Bois didn't want to see folks who, like her, like Sanger, didn't want to see people who were didn't want to see people who they viewed to be dysgenic procreate. They viewed them to be unfit to procreate. And not only did they view them to be unfit to procreate, but they also viewed them to be not really fit to even participate in society. Like she's Sanger basically, when you read My Way of Peace, she basically wanted them people who she viewed to be dysgenic, to be put in some sort of concentration camps and separated from the rest of society, segregated from the rest of society, you know. And Du Bois, you know, he and his talented team, black bourgeoisie crowd, you know, you have to be careful because you look at E. Franklin Frazier. Um, Read E. Franklin Frazier's book, Black Bourgeoisie, and if you read Carter G. Woodson, uh, Miseducation of the Negro, you see where the connect occurs because you will see where the black elitists such as W.E.B. Du Bois actively, as I stated earlier, they exploit the very people who they fit to be undeemed, who they fit to be least intelligent and unfit to procreate, as Du Bois would put it, right? This is why Du Bois had a problem with um, Booker T. Washington, and because of Booker T. Washington had been a slave, and you know, and he had a problem with Marcus Garvey as well, because he viewed Marcus Garvey to not be intelligent as well. W.E.B. Du Bois was an elitist, and it seems as if he may have been you know, a proponent of the color caste system within the black community as well. And it's just it's not cool. And in the black community, a lot of times, race, you know, class, you know, skin tone would be a vehicle of upward mobility, which is awful, you know. It was used as a vehicle of upward mobility, and now that interracial marriage is not illegal anymore and it's more widely accepted, it has been a transition from a color caste system of trying to intermarry with the lightest black person that you can marry to marrying outside of the black race, you know. If, and as I said, I think earlier in for this video, I may have said it on my first attempt at this video. If God put a couple together, that's wonderful. But to use interracial relationships and marriage as a method of upward mobility is it's exploitative and it's wrong. You know, to use interracial marriage and relationships as if it's some sort of status symbol is awful. You know, that is terribly awful. And so Du Bois, it seems that with Carter G. Woodson's book, Miseducation of the Negro, Du Bois would be a person who would be considered by Carter G. Woodson's definition a malcontent, an educated black person who was not prepared for the who was not prepared for the workforce within the communities in which they existed, particularly in America at that time during post Reconstruction America and stuff. They weren't prepared for that. So those who went to school for liberal arts, you know, if they unless they were applying for school, predominantly black schools, and even then you had like clergymen and other and like newly graduated whites who had little experience in education going to teach at those schools. Usually they had to compete with whites for jobs at that time. And at that time, more often than not, they weren't hired for the jobs, even in predominantly black organizations and institutions, places of and places of employment. You know, they weren't hired for those. And so, honestly, they they struggled because they were educated, but they weren't educated to do jobs that were actually available for Black people. And Carter G. Woodson stated that many let their education handicap them in the sense that they were not open doing doing jobs that were um beneath their education level. You know, even when it came to apprenticeships, they even when it came to apprenticeships, many of them didn't even want to do apprenticeships unless it was like a paid apprenticeship or internship, because they okay, and I would say I can understand to a certain extent, their point of view, because they may have been told, or things were sold to them. Okay, you go to school just like today. You go to school, you get a job. You go to school, you finish, you get a good paying job. Then you've learned, okay, you go to school, but okay, you got to network with a bunch of got to network with a bunch of sketchy type people, whether they have the veneer of being a part of the elite or not. Oh, and there are like lots of other things you need to go and do in addition to just getting the degree. It's other things you need to do in addition to that. So with them, they may have been told, hey, go to school, you have to be able to get a job, make a decent living. And that wasn't what was happening. And Carter G. Woodson said that many of them grew malcontent. They were discontent with their situation, and they looked at uneducated yet successful Black entrepreneurs and skilled workers and artisans with envy, because those people were able to go out and make a living and support themselves, and provide a life for themselves, provide a decent life for themselves and their children, a more economically stable life for themselves and their children, and build businesses and legacies and stuff when they had the proper business savvy and knowledge at their access. And he even gave the example of having an ice wagon, right? And how lucrative having an ice wagon in the summer was, where you sold ice. And there was a young lady he gave as an example that her mother washed clothes for a living, and the girl, I think she sold fruit or something like that. And basically, the point that Carter G. Woodson was making was that young white people didn't look at working what would seem to be service jobs or menial labor with shame, that they would look at those jobs, study the techniques and the processes of it, and then build a business based upon their knowledge of that job and the industry of that particular, that to which that job belongs. Like he said, the girl whose mother washed clothes for a living, she could have observed her mother and applied her education to study the laundry process and how to basically, I guess, build laundromats and build and refine, create or refine effective washing techniques and build a business around that, and generate a lot of customers based on that. And I can see that very well. It's like the point of view of George Washington Carver when George Washington Carver, when he studied the peanut, though I don't think he made peanut butter. I don't think he invented peanut butter. Let's look it up. Who in peanut butter? Okay, Marcellus Gilmore Edson invented peanut butter. He was a Canadian chemist and pharmacist. And in 1884, he patented a way to make peanut paste, an early version of peanut butter. And then Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, the creator of Kellogg's cereal, patented a process for creating peanut butter from raw peanuts. But it's like that. But Josh Washington Carver he invented so much using the peanut until it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing until it's just not funny. It's amazing. But yes, though, that is what uh that is what George Washington. I mean, that is what Carter G. Woodson was discussing. And so the when you look at E. Franklin Frazier's Black Bourgeoisie, you see where these people carved out niche liberal arts, still carved out a niche for themselves in liberal, what would be seen to be liberal arts and philosophical type arenas. And more in the other types of fields of occupations such as doctor, lawyer, teacher, that kind of thing too, and theologian. And they looked at, okay, they basically created their own sub society that they created their own sub culture within the Black community that was founded upon the elitism, and where they mostly socialize among themselves. And tied into that, due to the color caste system, was this whole, like, in Louisiana, many of them call themselves Louisiana red bones and stuff. But and them high yellow folks, them Frenchmen, right? That's what they get referred okay, Creoles and stuff. So they get referred to here in Louisiana, right? But basically the mixed Black folks, right? How the real ice scare was, especially the ones who were more considered more accepted by their white ancestors, their white family members, like they daddy was white or something. Those who were more accepted by them, they were in this weird space within the Black community, in the at the top of the color cast, but not necessarily. It's weird. It's like they either in the Black community, that group of people, the mulattoes and octoroons and quadroons, they either totally accepted by some to the point of butt kissing and boot licking, you know, where they get basically treated like they royalty or something, like they better than all other Black folks, or they get rejected. People, constantly try, even if they themselves don't, even if they don't think it, people, because they're light skinned, people perceive that they probably think that they better than regular black people, right? And those folks, they get rejected, or people try to, let them know y'all ain't better than nobody, you know. But also seen beautiful black women who are dark skinned, who are brown skinned, they get completely totally disrespected because they are dark skinned or brown skinned. And when they hair is damaged from being relaxed, and it look all, because and at one time I had that issue myself when I had a relaxer, but it was damaged and I had to shave it off. I had to get a fade and start over. But uh they really get teased because they don't have more Eurocentric texture, a more Eurocentric texture hair, a more Caucasoid. They were going more Caucasoid type texture hair. And it's an awful thing for someone to get denigrated because of that. Very awful. This is why I think, as I stated earlier in this video, and it might have been in the first attempt, I do not like when I see black men online or in public anywhere tearing black women down. And these fools who go around calling black women, especially dark skinned black women, darkest, sound like a bunch of fools. And you are acting like a bunch of fools. And you are the only ignorant idiots of, of, of all the men on the planet that get online, they get on a public platform and tear down the women of your own race like a-holes. You do this. And it makes you look weak and impotent. It makes you look weak like a buster and like a dusty fool. It makes you look like a punk, like a whiny punk, especially when you date outside of your race and you disrespect and disregard and denigrate and act very emotionally and even physically abusive to the women outside of your race. And it's like, okay, well, you say black women are so bad, but what's your excuse why you treat these other women bad since you act like these so much better? You're fools. And black women are better off without you, so goodbye. Black women are better off without you. And black women, quit publicly talking about how polygamy is so much, in the sense that you making heroes of men outside of your race, because it's kind of like, okay, they're just people, all right? It's not a good look when you do that. Putting down your own folks, it's not a good look, okay? It's just not. Anyway, and this is what Du Bois was guilty of about his collusion with Margaret Sanger. That's what he is guilty of. And there are many others. This is why it is important for us to be able to distinguish between an ally like Lila Grace Rose, Cheryl Sullinger, David Daley, Micaiah Bilker, Stephen Ertel. They are allies, They are allies. Rand Paul is an ally. Scott, let's see. I usually can think of that man's name. Scott Jensen, that's it, in Minnesota. He is an ally. Okay. They are allies. Angela Stanton King is an ally. Okay. Of course, Dr. Mills Jefferson, Fannie Lou Hamer. They are warrior queens. and allies. Okay, Cheryl Summers is a warrior queen and an ally. See, you got to be careful about who you consider to be an ally, because these people who come to you like, oh yeah, let me represent you. I can advocate for you. They are using you as the platform that to upon which to exalt themselves. That is what they are doing. It's like people who go around, they situated, they doing good, and yet they exploit you for your work and then won't give you credit, neither compensate you in any sort of way, and take your work nearly verbatim of what you said. Don't even have sense enough to change it up to where it's their own and doesn't even really sound too close to what you said. You see? And that's what many elitists do. They look at Nikola Tesla. Lots of people like Thomas Edison swooped in and stole his work and patented. Nikola Tesla, a genius inventor. That's who Elon Musk named the Tesla Corporation after. This man invented a method for free energy, to harness free energy, you see? And so, but it's so many, like for instance, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Tesla may have invented the radio, but Nicholas Marconi got the credit. At least I think his name, not Nicholas, not Nicholas. What's Marconi name? This is something Marconi radio. I hadn't looked at that much since I took radio broadcasting in high school. Marconi radio. Tesla. Yeah, that was Marconi stole Tesla invention. Yeah, okay, I'm seeing this now. It say Nikola Tesla gave a public demonstration of the wildest transmission of energy on March 1st, 1893. He had created an induction coil to transmit and receive radio signals. Years later, while he was preparing to transmit signals at a distance, okay, they said so was another inventor. Should I attempt to pronounce Marconi first name? The Guglielmo or Guglielmo Marconi. Now I heard Marconi stole. That's what I heard back when I was in radio broadcast. Took radio broadcasting. I heard Marconi stole Tesla's invention. That's what I heard, but this may not be true. I don't know. Let's see. Ah, okay. Now here is a source from TeslaUniverse.com. That Tesla was very good at getting press coverage for his work, but Marconi came along and captured all the glory and credit before Tesla realized what was going on. Tesla actually invented the idea of radio in 1892, not too long after Heinrich Hertz's demonstrated UHF spark wireless transmissions in Germany in 1885. Okay, so there we go. It's like it's getting lighter in here all of a sudden. Okay, but that's what happened with that. But yes, though, I ain't gonna lie, I kind of forgot what the point that I was making. Yes, I remember now. But that's what the bourgeoisie has a tendency. They will get there and not just black leaders, many of them. You know, even when they don't think you good enough to be in their class, of people, they will try to exploit you for your labor. It's like when you Plato, for instance. Plato was a person who thought that society should be stratified into three castes. You know, he thought that society should be stratified into three castes. I learned this by watching Prophecy Club's episode featuring speaker Martin Malone. Okay. And he stated that Plato was an early eugenic population control proponent. He had little regard for family, and he wanted to build a society structured on a three-tiered caste system: the gold, silver, and bronze. Elitists would be considered to be the upper middle class to the wealthy class of society, and included wealthy entrepreneurs, statesmen, doctors, lawyers, And then the silver but they would be controlled by 10 kings over them who control the resources. Now that reminds me of Revelations, where it's discussed about the 10 kings, like the 10 horns represented 10 kings who hadn't yet received their kingdom. Okay. And then there's the silver class, the military class bred to protect the gold class. And then there's the bronze, who were considered to be the great unwashed masses. Sound like Du Bois and Sanger. And Plato felt that children should be raised and indoctrinated by the state. And let's see. And even among Christianity, you have to be careful about elitism and infiltrating the church, because John Veillon, as Martin Malone referenced, wrote a book called UN Global Straitjackets, which discussed Christian and secular groups partnering with the UN to build the NWO. And then he also discussed Adam Weishaupt, who was like Plato, and remember, Illuminati and stuff. Uh, Adam Weishaupt, like Plato, believed in a three-tier stratification of society as well, which he referred to each tier as the doers. And personally, I feel like being a doer is fine. It's fine depending on how you do it. Like the song says, "Tain't what you do, it's the way that you do it." And then the watchers, those who observe, and they observe, and some people say observe and complain. And then the do nothings and know nothings. Now, honest, which would be again unwashed masses. Now, here's the thing about that. That is, as I may have said this in my other video, that a mother attempted this video. That is a simplistic view of society and the people groups they're in, because it doesn't account for variables that influences and shapes individuals and their experiences that impact groups, societies, and civilizations. One has to know what it is like to walk a mile in another's man's shoes, as Mary T. Lathrop stated in her 1895 poem, Judge Softly, which I'll include in the article because it's a kind of long poem. Okay, and this video is probably going to be about 3 hours now. Anyways, oh, I hope it ain't 4 hours. But anyway, because then if it's 4 hours, I'm gonna have to break it down in 2 parts. Anyway, yes. Now, her sentiment of walking a mile on another man's moccasins is how what she stated in her poem. In her poem, Just Softly. Her sentiment of walking a mile on another man's shoes is correlates. It expresses, it aligns with Jesus' assessment of the scribes and Pharisees of Matthew 23, 1 through 7, as well as Matthew 7, 1 through 5. Matthew 7, 1 through 5. When we read Matthew 7, uh, we read Matthew 23, 1 through 7 already. And ooh, that light is getting peculiar. I think it's because it's gotten darker in here because I think it's about to storm again. Okay. Hey, camera, why are you compensating with the anyway? Oh, yeah, adjusting, getting more comfortable. Okay. But yes, though. Now, we read Matthew 23, 1 through 7 earlier. So let's read Matthew 7, 1 through 5. Judge not that ye be not judged, for with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. And with what measure ye meet, it shall be measured to you again. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, and behold, a beam is in thine own eye? Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote of thy brother's eye. We should not unrighteously, hypocritically, nor self-aggrandizingly judge anyone. We each have our own cross to bear. This is why we are to take the yoke of Jesus upon us and learn of him, because his yoke is easy and his burden is light. We should not become nor create burdens to be stumbling blocks for others through our own self-righteousness. And this is what Jesus was discussing in Matthew 23, 1 through 7, when he said, then spake Jesus to the multitude and to his disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. All therefore, whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do, but do not ye after their works, for they say, and do not. For they bear heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. But all their works they do for to be seen of men. They make broad their phylacteries and enlarge the borders of their garments, and love the uppermost rooms at feasts, and the chief seats in the synagogues, and greetings in the markets, and to be called to men, rabbi, basically. Kind of like, okay, if you know people who are involved with Freemasonry, right? That most worshipful master stuff, right? Even though Jesus said, call no man master, but only one is your master. the like only Jesus is Jesus is your master. It's kind of like with the offense to make Freemasons, but that's what the Bible says. And like with the priests and stuff, they get called father, even though Jesus said, call man, no man your father, for the only one is your father, you just your father. So, but in the case of the, in the case of like the scribes and the Pharisees, they come up with a bunch of traditions and things for other people to have to follow, and a lot of it was a bunch of tedious foolishness that they placed ahead of following God's law. And this is what Jesus warned them of. Yet, they didn't heed Jesus' warning either. And so we got to be aware of who our allies are and who our enemies are. And has given us the responsibility to protect the children. We have to look at the survivors of abortion, the survivors overcoming the terrors of abortion. You see, there's Melissa Horton, who was an abortion survivor. She was going to be chemically aborted, and her life was saved. But she did experience chemical abortion, and it didn't kill her. It didn't take her out. I don't mean to use the term take out, but let's look at Melissa Oda. I included a video of her telling her story in my article. Yes, she learned that, let's see, and she has a website as well, melissaoden.com. Let's see, I'm trying to get to her about page. Okay, she's a social worker and the author of You Carried Me, A Daughter's Memoir. And her second book, she has a second book that was published, or should have been published in 2021, and she is the founder and director of the Abortion Survivors Network, and is the only healing and advocacy organization for abortion survivors. And her and her team are connected with 356 abortion survivors. Let's see, they connected with 356 survivors as of 2020. Okay. And she works vehemently in the pro-life movement to make sure the message is shared. And she says, your current circumstances are part of your redemption story he is writing. That's her quoting of Venda Le Pen, you know. And she survived. She learned when she was 14 years old that she is the survivor of a botched abortion. She really did. And then there's Nick Hoot, who is the survivor of abortion. And he has limbs missing. But despite that, he is a champion athlete. He's a champion athlete who is a victor. He is an overcomer. He is a victor, not a victim. He overcame. And then there's so many people who have survived abortions, who didn't, even if their abortion wasn't started, their mothers made someone intervene and talked to their mothers and advocated for them and their mothers to not choose abortion. And that's what we want. People say it takes a village to raise a child, and it does take a village to raise a child. I, for one, I intend to adopt children. I do. I intend to adopt children. I've wanted to adopt children since I was about 5 years old or so. I wanted to adopt children. I constantly try to get my parents to adopt, but my dad wasn't necessarily the most stable, so he wasn't necessarily the most stable. And at the time when my parents would have been considering, adopting, my dad abandoned my mother and I. But God is good. God is good. He took care of my mother and I. He took care of me, my mama, and my daddy, and me and my mama, and he taking care of me. You know. And he will take care of me and my beautiful adopted children when he is ready for me to have them, ready for me to adopt them. And that will be wonderful. So looking forward. Yes. But, we have to look at that. We can't just ignore the people who are most impacted by abortion, which is those whose lives, yeah, I pulled it down, and y'all should know this. But we can't ignore those whose lives are most impacted by abortion. And that is the babies whose lives are in danger by abortion. Now, in 16 states, prior to the overturning of Roe versus Wade, in 16 states, babies born alive after abortion could be left to die. There's a baby who was born alive after an abortion and was just left to die. The baby was crying until it died. There's no possible way. Oh, if I had been there, I would have just told the medical staff, give me that baby. I wouldn't have told them, then I'd have knocked all them out and took that baby and left right up out of there. That's what I would have done. That's me. That's what I would have done. Everybody would have, I'm like, you get in my way. I don't curse anymore. I'm a Christian. But yeah, you get in my way. You just don't get in my way. That's what would have happened. So abortion is like it's another form of population control. It's another form of elitism. It's subjugation, it's denigration, dehumanization, so like genocide, population control, manifest destiny, imperialism, colonization too, and for servitude, and for sterilization. Abortion is horrible. It is a horrible practice, is what it is. Abortion is a horrible practice and it needs to end altogether. It needs to end altogether, and trying to scapegoat Christianity as as legitimizing slavery is a lie, because the form of slavery that is referenced in the Bible is not that which occurred in other countries, in other countries, nor during the transatlantic slave trade. The slavery discussed in the Bible was more or less a form of indentured servitude, and even when it was where, okay, yes, the person is now owned by another person, right? It was parameters were set where that person had to be treated with dignity, and if not, they had the right to run away, had the right to leave without being returned to the abusive owner. And then some people, it was also a law where some people could say that they wanted to be a person's slave until they died, and then all will be placed in their ear to be us to show that they were the property, that they belong to that owner, you know. And God speaks vehemently against of the abuse of a slave. He speaks adamantly rather against the abuse of a slave, And during the transatlantic slave trade, the Bible wasn't taught in its entirety to the slaves, because there was fear that insurrections and mutinies would occur as a result of people recognizing that they were in fact human, and that they were free in the Lord, free in Christ Jesus, and they would fight back, and that they would fight back. So the slave Bible was created, which only included like 14 books of the Bible, if I'm not mistaken. I think it included only 14 books of the Bible. Yes, it's in the Smithsonian, and you can read about it in the Smithsonian and Bridget Katz's article for the Smithsonian Magazine. Heavily abridged slave Bible removed passages that might encourage uprisings. And in my article, I wrote an article, Apostasy and the Slave Bible. I discussed the Slave Bible and its impact on Christianity and Western and non-Western indigenous cultures around the world. I state, as England became more secularized through the push of scientific naturalism, courtesy of Darwin, the godless concepts of natural selection and evolution introduced in Darwin's Origin on the Species of Race by means of natural, no, let's see, on the origin of species by means of natural selection, the preservation of the favored races in the struggle for life. That book encouraged apostasy, and that type of thing, it concepts such as eugenics and that the survival of the fittest type competition, that that is that the foundation of it is unbelief and fears. It's unbelief and fear, you know, and so in that context, a fear of scarcity. And the thing is, God will provide. God will provide. Don't be afraid. God will provide your needs for you. There are times when me and my mama, we be so low in money until we be having to go around trying to look and find change. There was times where we had to go sell cans to get some money. Go and sell aluminum cans to get some money, and be asking around the different people and stuff, and like you got $1 and that kind of stuff. And you might not even know if you're gonna eat that day. and that kind of thing. It was times me and my mama done been like almost not too full. Yeah, we've been like 2 weeks without food. Almost 2 weeks, 2 weeks, maybe a little longer. Definitely 2 weeks with no food. When you a woman, you got to eat. You know, there are reasons you have to have something to eat, you know. And you know, but God provided. There, God provided in the days when we were hungry, I didn't have no food, nothing to eat. You know, God carried us through. We focused on the Lord. He carried us through. And when He did come through, and I look back and I think about it, there are times when uh, God does everything for a reason. And anybody who's preaching health, wealth, and prosperity to you and acting like something wrong with you because you poor or because you struggling, something wrong with them. You know, something's wrong with them, you know. Because God never said that your prosperity and stuff in life is an indicator of how good of a person you are, how much He favors you. God said that the sun shines on the just and the unjust too, you know. So we just gotta gotta focus on God. We have to focus on God, and follow God's word. God said that a man who doesn't care for those of his own house is worse than an infidel. You know, and in this context, I'm not talking about people who've been raped or even people who were given incorrect information about what abortion is. Giving misinformation, disinformation. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about people who know what abortion is and willfully proceed forward and advocate for it anyway. Proceed forward with it and advocate for it anyway. That's what I'm discussing. And slavery and slavery, false imprisonment, human trafficking. Those things still are occurring here in society now. They are still occurring now. And we have to put an end to this. Abortion is one thing that helps to shield sex human trafficking because they don't report or inquire when girls and women who are being human trafficked are seeking to have an abortion. They don't report that those women are having abortions, or neither the possibility that those women, so sorry, neither the possibility that those women are being kind of, in a situation where they're being victimized, and exploited. They don't report that. Even in instances of rape, they don't report that. Rape and incest, they don't report it, even though they could. So we just had to be more vigilant. And this is Stage Left Planet. I'm your host, Warita Wimbush, and this episode is abortion. Legalized abortion is a form of Neo-Chattel slavery that traffics in death. Focus on God.